Hi, friends. Welcome back to another Kids Mental Health webinar in our series on child sexual abuse prevention. I'm Riley Bosey with Dakota Medical Foundation, and with me today is Scott Holman.
Well, we want to welcome you to this Kids Mental Health series on child sexual abuse prevention. And we know that this is a sensitive topic, but there couldn't be a topic that's more important and more relevant for us to have this discussion around. And joining us today is a very special guest, Leslie Brunette. And she's an authentic voice and passionate advocate speaking up for victims of child sexual abuse. She is a mother of three and a wife to her best friend of over 22 years. Leslie, welcome to this episode on child sexual abuse.
Oh, hello, and thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for hosting this event. And I just want to echo what you just said about that this couldn't be a more timely and important topic, because it truly is. Unfortunately, it is important to be talking about it all the time. So I am excited and happy to be here today.
Well, we're
Thank
so
you.
thankful that you're willing to come forward, and not just on this episode, but for everything that you've done for preventing child sexual abuse, for the curriculum we'll share about later, and for all the efforts that you've done to stand up for those that are victims of child sexual abuse. And so, Leslie, to begin our conversation for all of our viewers, could you share about your personal experience with this issue and give us some insight into what you've experienced and what that looks like for victims?
Yeah. So when I say I'm an authentic voice, some ask me, what does that mean? Or I just kind of get a look like, what does being an authentic voice mean? And in my case, I'll say unfortunately, and also I guess to only to my benefit, because it's helped me want to be a voice. I am a survivor and thriver of childhood sexual abuse. I come from a family of I have two beautiful sisters and my incredibly strong mother. It was my father who abused us, and growing up with that as your story or your truth, I don't wish that on anyone, but I will insert what I said about the fact that because that is my truth and that is my past, it's something that I have chosen to really seek to understand how to not have that be other children's truth and story. And so as I grew up and beginning to, I don't remember what age I was when I realized what was happening to me. I knew what my father was doing. It really was not right. And, we talk about sometimes to my own children, I explain to them, you get this gut feeling, or you have these just kind of icky or butterflies, or you just feel gross. And there were several times where when my father was doing something that was at the time sexually, or it's always sexually inappropriate, but just that it was sexually inappropriate, I didn't know that wasn't normal, but I knew that it wasn't right. And so fast forward to just the years, I was 12 years old when and I mentioned my beautiful sisters, my older sister was courageous enough to share and tell a family friend what was happening. And they fortunately decided to report that. And what happened is that then the police came and took my father. They immediately, after they interviewed us, they immediately took him to jail, and he ended up in prison. And when I, without sharing too much horrific detail, there was enough both sexual and physical abuse from our father to put him away for, at the initial time, it was supposed to be like 99 years. And what happened is that it was plea bargained down to, I think, about 10, and he was released on good behavior after maybe 7. And I'm probably not 100% right on the numbers, but the most important part is that the abuse ended because my sister spoke up. And then what took place from there is why I now feel so passionate about talking about child abuse prevention and child sexual abuse prevention, because through conversations and through individuals like myself or others maybe that have experienced it, when we can share that, the reality was horrific, and yes, it's caused some issues in my life, both mentally and physical harm to myself over the years. But I also was able to seek help because I didn't want to repeat that cycle. I knew I didn't want to do that to my own children, and I wanted to understand why would my father do that to his children? And more importantly, how can we ensure that others understand and start believing that it is something you can get help for, you can learn new behaviors, and you can make a choice not to do that. So that is a little bit about my story and the reason why I'm so passionate. And again, I just thank you guys for having these conversations, and hopefully I'll be able to answer more and inspire and encourage others to, number one, learn more, and then start taking action yourselves to learn, have a conversation, encourage others to stop what is happening so that other children don't have to experience it as well.
Well, your bravery to share your story is inspiration to all of us. And, until we push this out of the shadows, we're not going to be able to deal with it. And that's part of what the series and the efforts at Dakota Medical Foundation are about, with your help, is to raise awareness and action around preventing this. And you've shown through your personal story two things right there, is that, there is hope for healing moving forward, and that there also is, hope that you can do something about this, as both, so the victim and the abusers, we can prevent this. Your story, Leslie, this takes place in the home. And one thing before we start to move on through your journey, could you share a little bit about just how maybe common this is, and what types of scenarios are generally where this is happening? And, would people be surprised at the cases and what we're seeing when it comes to child sexual abuse?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's, in the curriculum that we're going to talk a little bit about, there are statistics that I even found alarming, that the majority of sexual abuse occurs from individuals that we know, whether it be someone personally in our home, a parent, or just sometimes a sibling, or an aunt and uncle, or just extended family members, or a member, a friend of the family. So again, I emphasize the fact that sexual abuse is often occurring, most often, by someone that is known and trusted. And that is why it's so important to be talking about this. And in the curriculum, again, I know that we're going to get there, but something that was an aha moment for me, as both someone that was abused by someone in my home, my father, was the talk, the definition and the explanation about grooming and what signs to look for. And so when our children maybe don't have the words, like I didn't have the words as a child, or feel courageous enough to say exactly what my father was doing to me, but if other adults knew what to be looking for and were made aware of the signs and what the definition of grooming is, or the meaning behind some of the words that I was saying, or behind some of the behaviors that I had, then that would have alerted and translated into, oh, that's why Leslie doesn't like her father, or that's why Leslie is upset at this time, or that's why there are behaviors, outbursts or other things that are happening that are truly signs of maybe not only sexual abuse, but any kind of abuse. Children's actions and words, even though they're not clear, they're telling us what's going on if we know how to listen for it.
And you talk about, being surprised by things that were found in the curriculum. I think another thing that surprises people is, when the abuser is out of the victim's life, the problem isn't just solved right there. There are long-term implications, like you touched on. Could you elaborate a little more on what that can look like for a victim?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad that we're talking about it, because I sometimes, because I am a passionate speaker and advocate, I've had people share that they think like, oh, well, it didn't really affect you, or you seem happy, or you seem well adjusted. I will tell you that it's taken me a long time to get to this point in my life, and I still have much work to do, is what I would say. The abuse that I endured, again, I didn't realize at the time exactly always what was going on, but it affected me in multiple ways. I had difficult times with relationships with trusting other men, and with dating relationships with boys. There were times when I was promiscuous because I don't know exactly what I was seeking, but they're just seeking attention or love. I also participated, and I'm not proud, but I'll just share because it's important for people to know that the effects of abuse on children, both mentally and physically, can lead to addictions, can lead to self-harm. I drank at an early age, and I'm assuming it's because I was trying to numb the pain. Fortunately, I was able to overcome and haven't dealt with being, an alcoholic for life. But it's definitely, I think I was probably 12 years old when I started drinking and trying to numb things. I had an eating disorder for a long time because I just felt so horrifically ugly and unattractive. And just to, put it bluntly, I just felt really gross about who I was. And I felt like it was somehow my fault that type of abuse, physical and sexual abuse, was happening to me. And so I felt damaged. I didn't think that I don't know. I didn't think I deserved attention or love from others. And then all of that just kind of snowballed into me being a very unhappy, depressed, angry, and I would even say just kind of a mean-spirited person. And I no longer feel that way. And I'm lucky enough to have people in my life that continue to encourage me and tell me, I can't even imagine you being an angry person or someone that was mean or harming yourself. But I choose to share all that so that anyone listening knows that it is a journey. And if I hadn't sought help, if I hadn't decided to participate in the counseling that was offered to me, and then continued to seek it ongoing in my life. Like the company that I work for right now has some incredible health benefits because they really believe in the importance of changing the lens on mental health. Just because someone appears happy or successful or joy-filled and hope-filled, it doesn't mean that they still don't have things that they're trying to work through, or flashbacks, because that's something that I still do periodically deal with. But again, because I've chosen to lean into and seek out other ways, new ideas, a different path to disrupt these stories or the flashbacks in my head and replace them with healthy or the alternative truth and reality that can be if you're not abused. That's the only reason that I'm able to stand here today to comfortably and with a sense of joy share this information. And I just hope that it is a catalyst or a spark for others to go, okay, maybe I'm not feeling so great right now because of I too went through abuse. But if I maybe seek out and ask someone, who should I talk to? Or if I just participate in, for example, becoming a part of the work that you all are doing in spreading this information, in sharing, and maybe becoming a trainer of sharing the curriculum. When we serve others and get ourselves off of our mind, we often are able to rise above the situation that is overcoming us. And that's also the other reason I do this, is because I find like, okay, if I get myself off my mind and my issues off my mind, I am given the chance and the beautiful opportunity to see the joy and smiles that it can bring to other people. And then I'm filled in return.
Well, continuing, this, long-term path of healing. Before we move into prevention, Leslie, is there any things else that you would like to share from your path to healing, that you'd like to pass on to our audience that are listening today?
That's a really awesome question. I would say there are a couple things, and probably 3 things that have helped me tremendously. Whether or not listeners and anyone that ends up seeing this are people of faith or have any, just I don't know where people are with believing in God or believing in any sort of faith, but I will tell you that one thing that has really helped me and anchored me in the ability to transform and evolve and replace. When I mentioned earlier, I was just not a kind person. The kindness came from what I was reading in scripture and surrounding myself with others that also were anchored in faith and seeking to serve others in a way that is encouraging others and building them up. So I will just say, number one, my faith has been huge. Seek out whatever that looks like for you as an individual. And maybe even if you're not in that place, try it, see what happens. It will somehow transform you. Another, what I would encourage to do is reach out and find someone to talk to, whether that is in Fargo. One of the amazing organizations that really helped us as a family was Rape and Abuse Crisis Center. We were plugged right into them, and I had a couple amazing counselors as a child, giving our children opportunities to connect with and learn what it means to talk to a counselor. And as an adult, reaching out to talk to a counselor or a therapist and not being embarrassed about it. And I'll emphasize that because I think that there's still stigma for anyone. If you're thinking about reaching out and talking to a counselor or getting help, maybe there's that thought of, well, people are going to think there's something wrong, or that I'm weak, or that I can't handle this. Or maybe you were raised in a family where they didn't believe in counseling or therapy. But to me, it's no different than getting a coach or reading a book and learning new things. Therapy and counseling is our gateway and our path to changing and disrupting what is happening. That's just new information can always change hearts and lives. And they might be able to identify and share something with us that we would not otherwise know. And then the last thing I would say that has really truly helped me is sharing my story. And I know that's not easy, and it's not what everyone desires to do, but I truly believe that being able to let your story out, even if it's just on paper or with a really truly trusted, just one-on-one conversation with a friend, a spouse, whoever it is that you trust, let that story out and see what happens. You don't have to share it with the world, but there's power in letting it out so that you no longer have to hold on to it and let it control you. And then who knows, maybe your story coming out is going to spark somebody else's courage for them to share the story. And ultimately, my goal is, because of these conversations and all of us sharing, the people that are choosing to abuse children and other people, they're going to go, okay, people are aware of this. It's not in the dark anymore. And this isn't a secret. I'm not going to continue to get away with this. So it is extremely important for us to be talking and just finding our inner courage and bravery.
Well, it's so clear that you're doing better now. Just standing before us today, so bravely sharing your story. It's clear that these things have helped you. And now, as we stated in your intro, you're a wife and a mother to 3. And just having experienced this and gone through this path to healing, what do you as a mom wish other parents knew about it?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So I'm so glad you're asking this question. And I'll tell you exactly why I'm having this reaction. I didn't know that I wanted to be a mom. I knew that I would never, ever, ever do what was done to me. I couldn't imagine being a parent that would abuse your child. But the reason I didn't know if I wanted to be a mom is because I was afraid. I was afraid that because I knew I didn't love myself, and that I just really felt like a messed up person. I didn't want to pass that on to my children. I didn't want to pass on potentially depression or anxiety, or, having them to have to witness flashbacks, or my self-harm of eating disorder, all of that. But when I met my husband, and who, as I said in my intro, is one of my best friends, it wasn't a question. We decided to become parents, and now we have 3 of the most beautiful children in our eyes. And I just am so thankful that I was brave enough to step into that. And then fast forward to, so my children I have a 20-year-old, which blows my mind that my baby is going to be 21 this year. And then I have a beautiful 17-year-old daughter and a 12-year-old son. And again, I just think, where has this time gone? But as I watch them and I think back on all the conversations that we've had, I've shared my story with them in ways that are not, not like graphically disruptive to them, but so that they can understand where I came from. And then we openly had discussions about what healthy relationships are, what boundaries are, that it's okay to say, no, you are my family member, but I don't feel like hugging you right now, for example, things that I didn't know as a child. So to go back to why I had that reaction, the curriculum that you all are sharing, and that I was lucky enough to be a part of helping to, to continue to share and be a part of when I lived in North Dakota, it is exactly what I wish that I had. Both as maybe not as a child, learning the boundaries, learning the things, but even more so as an adult, and now as a parent. If I had access to that curriculum and that information, there are things that I would have included in my conversations with my kids. There would be things that I would have seen or recognized and been so thankful for. And it's all ties back into, we don't know what we don't know. We all come from different places. Our families that we're raised in, we all have different traditions or expectations, or way that we show love to one another. And it's not, I'm not here to say that's wrong and this is right. What I'm emphasizing is there are signs, and there are important things to be aware of and to communicate and teach to our children. For example, the proper name of our private parts, instead of giving them nicknames, having them use the actual words that explain our vagina or our penis. And I know that that's extremely uncomfortable sometimes, because we're taught like, oh, don't say that word. But I'll tell you why it's important. If a child is trying to explain that someone touched their cookie, for example, if that's what they were taught as a child, and they say, oh, whoever touched my cookie, well, maybe miss the fact that they're not talking about an actual cookie. So little tiny examples like that, things that we can do, things that we can pass on and teach to our children, that ultimately end up being the reason that they are strong enough and confident and courageous enough to both put off the vibe for those that are thinking that they might want to abuse them. They will likely be, they'll look at the child and say, oh, they're very confident, they're probably not an easy person to prey on. And also the child would probably say, no, do not touch me, or this is not appropriate. But when we don't know this information, like as a child, I didn't know it was okay to say no. And I didn't really understand things because I didn't know.
Leslie, what is some ways that people can help? How can we take action around this issue and prevent it from happening?
Number one, and I think you're gonna, I know you're already talking about it and sharing this information, but I ask all of you that are watching this, share the content that you are receiving. I'm not saying that you have to share this interview, but there is a curriculum, and Stand to Protect. And what is the new name now? I'm so sorry, because is it still Stand to Protect, or is it 10 steps?
Child sexual abuse prevention. Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
And everybody that's watching will make sure to have the link included with this interview.
Okay. And so when we first started working on this project, it had a different name. And so I want to just say thank you to Dakota Medical Foundation for what you guys are doing and how you're continuing to evolve it. And the fact that you have child sexual abuse curriculum available. So that is the most important thing. Even if you feel uncomfortable sharing it with somebody, do it anyway, because that is that first step in our like courage journey. It is not an easy conversation to have. And I promise you, people are not going to be coming and saying, hey, does anybody have any child sexual abuse prevention curriculum? So it is our job to share the information, to pass it maybe in an email. I'll give you an example. I just moved to Texas and I live in a new community, and I've not witnessed yet, and I haven't heard that it's happening, but I know that sexual abuse happens in every community, unfortunately. And so I am choosing to share this curriculum with local people that I'm meeting. And all I've done, and I say this as an example so that some people are like, well, how do you do it? Or what do you say? I sent an email to a friend that is working in child protection facility. And I asked her, I said, would you mind looking through this curriculum and letting me know if there's anyone that you think of that we could share this with? And so it literally, that kind of email could go to anybody, or on Facebook or any social media. I am on Facebook. And so in the past, I have shared and tagged people. I'm not on Instagram, and I'm not like a super guru with lots of social media, but there are so many ways to share the information and create it as an invitation. Ask people for their time to both take a look at and ask for their opinion on maybe what they've learned. And then again, asking, who else can you think of? Who can you connect me with that I can share this with? So that, and take a look at the information, sign up and take the pledge, and then take action is my ask.
It's so important that it gets to as many people as possible, because you just never know when it's going to get to that right person that needs help at that time. And we're
Yeah.
so grateful that you were a part of the creation of it and that you're sharing it more. And you have just such a unique perspective, having lived it yourself, Leslie. So from that perspective, what's one thing that you wish more people knew about it?
About sexual abuse?
Yes.
Yeah. Just how prevalent it is, and how ashamed people feel about it. But I want to add to that you don't have to feel ashamed. And so, I don't know, sharing my story and talking about it. The more I talk about it, the more confident I feel. And for those family members and some friends that have kind of watched my journey over the years, they could attest to the fact that there were times when I first started sharing that I couldn't even make it through a presentation without bawling. I would just be so overwhelmed with emotion, and sometimes I would leave feeling ashamed. And so it is proof, as I stand here today in front of all of you, that I can actually smile. And the smile isn't about the content. My smile is because I know that these conversations will lead to more children being protected, abusers being stopped, and then also others that were abused themselves, that are survivors of childhood sexual abuse, will be able to overcome and thrive. And so I guess I'll anchor back to the importance of something that I want everyone to take away from this conversation, is how important it is to be talking about child sexual abuse prevention and saying it with confidence, so that when people hear that word, they too start feeling more comfortable and confident with it. The more that we can openly and comfortably talk about it, the less emotion and fear and darkness that will be associated with it. We can change the feelings that go with it, and it can become it can become like a tidal wave of like, yeah, we're done with this. We're done allowing you all that are abusing people to control us by keeping it in the dark. We're bringing it into the light so that the light shines on you and we know who you are, and we're going to protect our children and create a generation of children that are feeling empowered to be able to say no. And I also am going to make sure that I tell others about it. And then I'm going to be able to have healthy relationships and teach my future generations.
To bring something out of the darkness, we need to remove the shadows. And you've done that, Leslie, by standing up, by being so brave, and by sharing your story. You've told your personal story, so you are an authentic voice in this. You've shared how there's hope for every victim out there, that there is a path to healing and that there is a path to prevention, both for parts that kids can play, but also adults. And we can both learn what those roles are and how to prevent it at learnthescience.org. That will be shared, along with this video for everybody watching. We invite you to check out what Leslie shares in that curriculum. And Leslie, we just want to thank you so much for coming on this episode today and for all of the work that you're doing to helping to end child sexual abuse. We appreciate you and your voice so much.
Thank you. I am honored, and I will not stop until I can no longer speak. That's my commitment.
Well, everyone, we appreciate you watching, and please look to our social channels to check out our next series as we continue to move forward to discuss this topic of child sexual abuse prevention. Until next time, everyone.
Thank you so much. Take care.